So you're normally used to me giving lessons on the channel here. Now this is me receiving a long game lesson from the fantastic American golf coach, Jake Gilmer. Now, my long game's been suffering a little bit. My short game's kind of crept into my long game, and I've asked Jake to help me sort it out. So hopefully some of the faults I've got in my swing and how Jake diagnosing and some drills to fix them, hopefully that's going to help your game. Hope you enjoyed the video. Listen, Jake, really appreciate you coming on and helping me. We had a little chat online a couple of days ago, and you know, we've done a little bit of work together. Obviously, I've helped you with the short game. You've helped me a little bit with long game, but not for a while now. And I'm just getting a bit frustrated with my swing. Obviously, around the greens and putting, I'm fine, but I'm not hitting many greens at all. I'm getting a lot of shape both ways with mine, and a lot of miss hits. And you know, I'm very lucky. I'm getting a lot of really cool invites to some fantastic golf courses, and I'm sort of not enjoying it as much as I should do. You know, just purely because of the strike issue and you know how much the ball is moving around. I've played a Dare Manor last week in Ireland, and if you miss a green there, you're just in a whole world of bother. So it was a bit difficult. I've got TrackMan set up. Obviously, I've got the net at home here. I'm determined to work on it for the next couple of months. We're going to put this on video as well to kind of hold me accountable a little bit as well, and obviously hopefully some of the viewers can learn something from it as well, and get introduced to your coaching as well along the way, which I think will be pretty cool, because you know you're a top coach, Jake, one of the best coaches in the States, and you've got a lot of experience, so I'm looking forward to getting started with you. But is it okay if I just sort of offload on you where I think I am first, and then I know I've sent you some videos, and then you've had a look at them, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say first. But obviously, I've given almost as many swing lessons as I have short game lessons in my time. So I think I've got a little bit of an idea what's going on. But I would really respect your opinion. Looking forward to hearing it hugely. But I think what's happened, like if we go back, say 15, 20 years, I was actually quite a good iron play was the strength of my game. I was pretty strong in the compression. I was long with the irons. I was a decent distance off the tee. I've lost a lot of distance, by the way. You know, my driver's going straight. I'm hitting a lot of fairways, but I'm not carrying the ball anywhere near like I used to. I'm really struggling to get more than 235, 240 out of my drives carry. Okay, I'm swinging at about 10, 102 max. Okay, so I've lost a lot of speed. I've had a really busy couple of years, you know, working in terms of like just teaching. If I'm not teaching, I'm on a laptop. So I've got really stiff, shoulders have got rounded. I don't feel in great physical shape. I'm going to start working on that as well, by the way, to understand that obviously is important. But really what I'm feeling in terms of my swing is because I've done so much short game over the last 15 years in particular, everything's got very much this way. You know, what I call sort of release 2, like the butt of the grip is way back here with the irons. I saw a video of myself just last week playing. I could see just how much slip is in there, which is great for short game. But, you know, you tell me it's just terrible for long game. And I think it's just really the difference between long game and short game I always talk about. And I think my short game has come into my long game, and I spend most of my time trying to coach long game out of short game, whereas I've gone the other way. So I've got to try and get my long game back and get the short game out of it. Because I spent no time practicing my long game for basically 10 years. I've got to be totally honest, and I can't be surprised that it's gone. But some of the things I see and some of the things I have felt, I feel like my left hand has got stronger and stronger again. I quite like that in short game. It helps promote cup and release this way. So I feel I'd like to think about my left hand. My right hand sits okay, but my left hand gets very strong. And I've always had a lot of shoulder tilt. I think that's kind of naturally how I am. I think a lot of golfers have a low right shoulder from carrying a bag and just used to setting up that way. So I definitely feel that I've got too much tilt. My ball position gets way forward, and my handle gets sort of in line with the ball, even with an 8 or a 9 iron. So I get kind of strong in the grip, a lot of tilt, hands back. And then in the swing, I struggle to really complete my turn. I feel like I get pretty short, and then I really sort of drive. And I feel like I just can't get a strike. Like my hands feel like they're so high up here, like really in front of me here, and I sort of have to back off to try and get it in, and then I've just got this massive two-way miss. I mean, if I've got an 8-iron hand, I can hit it 30 yards right of the pin one shot and then 30 yards left with the next. So you can imagine trying to play golf not knowing where the thing is going, right, on championship golf courses. It's really difficult. So that's where I feel I am, but I'm totally open to you. Obviously, we've got to slightly bear in mind, yes, I'm going to hit balls, I'm going to work on it, but I don't want a total rebuild because obviously I'm playing quite a bit coming up. But saying that, if you want to push and work on a few more things, I'm absolutely open to that. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense and it's useful to you.
Yep.
And
it is. It's very useful.
Some of that makes sense.
It's all great. It's all great information that's super helpful for us going forward. Obviously, when we're trying to play golf, if we, look at what the best players in the world are doing, they have a one-way miss, right? That they control their miss, because we know there's going to be a lot of misses in this game. It's about controlling that and not having it going both ways. So that's a big, big part of it. And I agree with most all of what you're saying with your analysis. I would say that in the one video that I got from you, and it could be a little bit of camera angle, your ball position was more off of your nose in that particular video that you sent. And I'm going to kind of run through that analysis that I came up with, but I agree with you. All this short game teaching, obviously we have different release patterns because we're trying to engage the bounce more rather than the leading edge on a lot of these short game shots. So like you said, if you practice one thing, most of the best ball strikers with their hands way forward, they are not as good at short game, right? So we end up in a position where, like you said, you're trying to coach that out of a lot of players and yours went the other way. So and I agree, I think that most of your inconsistencies come from that flip release, right? So in the end, when we talk about like the least invasive path, right? If we quiet that club face through impact, we get a lot better start line and we get a lot better control of our path and curvature. Now, how do we actually prevent that from rotating more? Well, if we're looking at a release pattern coming in and you've got it very much like this through impact,
at the moment,
obviously we're going to have a lot of face closure. You can see it closing down a lot, right? Whereas if I actually get my body to open up a little bit more and still release it, you can see the face is going to be much more stable as it turns through because my body is turning through with it and it's not just a complete flip. Because if I were to flip, that's obviously more of an arm motion, right? Whereas if I add the rotation in and blend that, you don't see that thing zipping with all this face rotation right through impact where it matters most. So when we talk about like, okay, well, what if I got that a little bit later? What if that happened later when the ball's gone? Well, that's definitely an option. Why wouldn't it be the best option? Well, obviously you were talking about the speed issue, right? And with what's going on with your swing right now, I agree with you. All the coaching and sitting and not having time to really do a lot of fitness, it affects us, especially as we get older. And when we try to make a good full turn and get good full turn, like you see the best young guns in the world obviously turn a lot. You see Rory turning a lot. You see guys like Wyndham Clark, Scheffler, all these guys are getting a massive shoulder turn. Obviously, we have to take into consideration that we don't have the time to work on our fitness and the flexibility and mobility like them. Now, if you look at guys that don't have as much time, we just need to match up the turn with where we're at. So what I mean by that is if I don't turn quite as much and I try to have a structure like Rory McIlroy, I'm not going to get to this thing, right? So I'm going to have to make an adjustment. I'm going to have to get more narrow or I'm going to have to get less depth. I'm going to be in a position that's less optimal. So the matchup for a less turn would just be getting the hands a touch lower back here. Now, what most people would say immediately, well, lower hands would probably cost you some speed, right? It could, but in your case, it wouldn't. And here's why. Because remember, you're correct. You kind of come out early and you get a little bit steep here. So now that you're here, you're in a very steep position with your shaft and your arms. That means our body needs to shallow this out. And that's when you start backing out of it. And once you back out, now you're further from the ball. Therefore, you have to extend more to get down to the ball. So we have to lengthen this radius, and that makes us release earlier with all of this flip through the bottom. Okay, so when we talk about that, what if the hands were lower and I get in a position where now I can actually rotate without getting those hands to come out so early? I can keep a little more depth and I can continue to rotate a little more. that's obviously would be the optimal type position, because we know short term you're not going to gain 20 degrees of shoulder turn very likely. Okay, especially when you're out on the course playing under pressure of trying to hit good shots. So the better option is to match up with a touch lower and deeper hand structure.
I was going to say, Jay, that's great. So just on that, so so we're totally on the same page. Basically, we've got to get away from looking like this, and we've got to be looking more like this, like hat lower, club shallower, club head more behind the hands here, which 100%. Allows me then to move on to it more. Now, what I've always struggled with is like the concept of trying to actually shallow it, like actually make that move. So if you're telling me I can get that club in that position from a backswing move, and I don't have to physically try and drop the club, that would be music to my ears, because I've tried so hard and I cannot get that thing shallowing, right, at all.
And that is a difficult move for most, okay? It's one of the hardest things to teach someone that has a pattern of being steeper and getting in a position like you're in currently. So that being said, yes, we can make things a lot easier on ourselves by doing things that require less shift of our path or plane in transition. A great example of this is John Rahm, right? So John Rahm tends to be much more in this kind of a position where the shaft is flatter, more laid off, and that way he can just really rotate from there, right? Because he's in a good, strong position that matches with that. And you don't have to shallow if we already have the shaft in a position that is a little more laid off. Now, if you look at a lot of pros, they get a little bit more down the line, so there would be a little bit more shift involved in that. But for some, that's very difficult to feel. And one of the reasons it's very difficult for you is your lower body drive that you talk about. Because when we drive and slide a lot, we need to get these hands coming down quickly. Because if I don't, and I leave them up here and I drive, I mean, look where I'm at. I'm like way dumped under, and I'm going to hit huge blocks or hooks, which is not going to help us in this case at all, right?
No, that makes sense. Can I just ask about grip before we go on? Because when I was out in the States at the Masters at Reynolds Plantation, I remember on the Sunday morning of the final round, I went out and practiced at Reynolds before we watched in the afternoon, and I weakened my grip, and I probably had the best hour of hitting balls for years, right? Is this grip for you, is it really important I get it into a neutral position? Considering, you know, I reckon I've got a good three and a bit knuckles at the moment. And when I give myself two knuckle grip, it feels difficult because I haven't done it, and it feels, you know, I think changing my left hand, I think, is tougher than the right. You know, I think changing my left hand position is a really tough thing to do. But when I've had some real success, and the few good strikes I'm getting at the moment is when I weaken my hand, and when I feel my takeaway going more away this way, right, versus this way. So at the moment, I feel like I get low and I roll, right? So how important do you think, because just my feedback and my feel is when I weaken that grip and I stand a bit taller and get my hands higher, it really gives me more of this look in the takeaway. Can I work it to there and then get the depth I need, or are you looking to get deeper earlier? No. I love what you're talking about. I'm going to use this as an example. So here's why this works well for you right now. Okay, when we talk about, again, like lowest hanging fruit that we're attacking here to help you, if I get in a position where my hand is weaker rather than strong, that would be beneficial for someone that rolls so much and flips so much. Why? Because if I'm in a position that is very weak, obviously I need more supination than I would if I was in a very strong position. Because if I'm strong here, even with shaft lean, if I get too much supination, look where the face is. It's dead shut. So the matchup has to be, it has to match with ball position and the way we release and the grip. They all match up. So with you right now, with your current flip happening, obviously the weaker the face, the better that matches. And that would match better with a weaker grip. Because again, that matches with more supination. Now, if you could actually get a little bit of a leading with the wrist bone like Hogan talked about, more here,
and a little bit less complete flip and a little bit more of that and then a release, then obviously we would get a lot more consistent strike through the bottom. But I am absolutely good with, just keep this in mind. The weaker the grip, generally speaking, the more that we'll have to add just a little bit of wrist flexion or a motorcycle move, which a lot of pros do, somewhere either in the backswing. You could do it halfway back, you could do it at the top, or you could do it in transition early. That is usually going to be required. Otherwise, you're going to come in with this face much more toe up, which is going to require more supination and timing to match it up at the bottom. Okay, so they're good and bad with both. A stronger grip would require less supination, but it also requires our trail elbow to be more in front of us. Think of Dustin Johnson, because we need to be able to get this handle more forward to keep this from shutting down if our grip gets too strong, which you could see wouldn't be a good match for you currently.
So which grip do you want me to go with then?
I would prefer right now on the weaker side, because we have a release that matches with that better. And you do, what your thought with the takeaway going more here is a good matchup, because that's going to get that face in a much better place. Now, when you talk about getting depth, let's talk about depth here. So depth comes from turn, okay? So if you think of a guy like Freddie Couples, early on, he just lifts his arms, and then he gets depth later by turn. There's guys like Jay Haas, Kenny Perry, a lot of guys old school did that. Now, more of a traditional look would be more like Adam Scott being more in front of the sternum or the trail shoulder, and then from here, turning it deeper, okay? But the turn is what gets us that depth. The only other way to get depth, which we would never want to do, is to pull our arms back here behind us. But you could see that gets me very baseball or internal with this trail arm. So by you feeling more here, as long as we keep turning, if I just stop turning there and try to go to the top, my hands will go up. But if I keep turning, I'm going to be able to get them deeper. So I like that matchup better. I like you being in a position more here and then feeling a little bit more there.
And I'm guessing the weaker grip is also going to help me level the shoulders off a bit more at address.
Yes, it will. That looks good there.
So, okay, so that makes sense. So what we're talking about here then is standing a little taller, getting the grip a little weaker there, feeling like the left arm is like more in, like the tricep is more connected and something like that.
Yes.
And then from there, am I feeling this, like I've had a little bit of success sort of going back and actually just trying to point the club head that way? Or
that's a great question.
Or am I going to try and just get this with torso rotation? Or both?
Yeah. So I actually like what you demonstrated on the second one. Now, feel and reel are very different, as we know in golf and short game and everything else. I'm going to grab a basket here to just demonstrate, because I think this will help a lot of the viewers understand. So if I had a basket here or a bucket of water, and I took this back halfway and had it basically straight up where none of the balls or water would spill out, and now I was going to more of a laid off position, that would be forearm rotation, where I would feel like I was kind of dumping these behind me. You can see that gets me deeper, and it gets me a little more laid off. That'd be like old Ricky Fowler more.
Yeah.
And the only danger in that move would be if we flatten our shoulders doing it. You did not there. You did a good job. Yes. We would not want to do it like this, where we stood up out of our tilt.
You got to feel left shoulder going down as you make that move there.
Yes,
and
exactly.
How's that look
looks
there?
Great.
Yeah? So
that looks outstanding.
From there, that's going to help come down in here.
You're in a much deeper structure now.
And then
what that did for you, Dan, is got you in a much deeper position back here, to where now, if we start making a better move with some rotation, you can actually do that without being like where you were here, where you would just be out too far too early. And you being an athlete and knowing that I got to find a way to hit this ball, you know you'd be in big trouble if you tried to do that.
So explain to me why I'm driving the ball really well at the moment. Not the longest.
Yep.
I'm sure it's spinny. It is spinny. I know it's spinny. I reckon I've lost about 20 yards in the last 2 years, right? Maybe last year, right? But I'm hitting fairways and I'm hitting it good. The new driver, I love it, but I've lost distance. Is that because I'm this way and it's teed up high in the front foot and I can get in that way, but an iron play, it's just a disaster doing that?
The short answer is that short game in driver swing works a lot better than it does in iron swing.
Yeah, right.
That's really kind of what it comes down to, because we know we can release earlier, and it actually helps us hit up on the ball more. And we know with today's drivers, they're pretty forgiving clubs. And when we are, like you said, in more of a tilted position and an earlier release, that matches up much better when we're trying to hit up on a ball rather than down on it like we are with our irons trying to compress.
So would I take this?
Oftentimes,
sorry, Jake. Would I take this new swing just again? Because I think people don't always understand it. But I get a question all the time, as I'm sure you do. You know, the iron swing, driver swing, pitch swing, whatever. You know. So the question too is, what am I trying to swing it the same? Like tomorrow morning, I'm playing, right? I'm on the tee tomorrow morning. Am I trying to take this into driver the same as irons, or how would you actually go about that mentally?
Yes, so great question again. This is one of the beautiful things about golf, in my opinion, is there's so many separate disciplines to this game.
Yeah.
We have to know and differentiate. There's shots where we want to release early, use the bounce, set up differently for short game. There's iron shots, wedge shots, where maybe we're going to put the ball back a little more. Maybe we're going to feel a little more on the lead side with our pressure, and that matches good with a wedge. So when you ask about driver, the biggest differences are going to be in the setup, actually. Because we know we put the ball more forward off of our lead shoulder. We end up, whether we start with tilt or move into some tilt at the top, that's a good thing with driver, because we're trying to kind of load back here rather than just sit here on our lead side. So those things are changed just because either A, I start with more tilt, or I allow myself to move off a little bit with the driver. So between that and the ball position motion, all the rest of the actual mechanics of the swing are going to be very similar. You're going to feel different pressure at the top of the swing with the driver. You're going to still be about 50-50 to 60-40 favoring trail is fine. But there will be a little different feel of pressure. Your stance a little wider, the ball position's forward.
But the setup is changing the swing. The setup changes the swing.
The setup takes care of most everything.
Like in bunker play, I get different setups for different lights. Well. Yeah, it's the same thing as bunker play. The ball's forward and I'm tilted. That's going to allow the club to skip. If it's compact, I'll go more that way. You're changing the angle of attack by your setup. So I think that's a really good lesson for people watching. It's like just swing your swing, but change your setup. Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Right, shall I clip a few away then?
Go ahead.
So in terms of actually trying to, that's quite a big change. What would you recommend I do here, just to start with? I mean, first off, the grip there. If I go face on to here,
I like that.
That feels like super weak. That feels like I'm going to hit it off. There we go. That feels like I'm going to hit it off the planet right, just by holding it.
Make sure that isn't up in the palm too much. We want that under the heel pad there.
Got it there.
So there, absolutely.
Huh?
So that would be, that's in a good spot. Now, when you go about a big change like this, we know that you've had many, many years of doing it a different way and obviously lack of practice lately. So we know that in order to affect change, what is really the biggest key here? It's just like when you teach your short game. It's getting quality repetitions, right? If your students do exactly what you're asking them to or what you're working on, they're going to have a much higher translation to the golf course when they get out there and shut their brain off and play golf instead of golf swing. So when you're working here, what gets us the highest quality practice? That is the first question. So for most, it's not just, I call it the rake and hitters. They rake a ball in, hit.
You've got to focus
and they don't ever really have any focus there.
Are you a fan of setting the speed out, Jake?
That's obviously not going to help our situation. So in your case, what I would like, since you're used to doing a roll-in move and opening the face, I would start with like a move where I go, okay, there's one, there's two, there's three, and now I can start working into other positions. And that would be a great way to kind of go about it. Now, you say you're playing tomorrow, I believe you said, correct? Mm-hmm. So we have to remember in the end, when we play golf, I tell my students all the time, we have to play with what we've got type thing. So in other words, we know we're not going to take out all this slide by tomorrow. We're not going to take out, and get you in a perfect position every time in your backswing by tomorrow. So we have to match up what feels best, which you already made a great observation of weakening that grip and feeling a little more here in your takeaway.
Yeah.
So that was a good change, and that's something that you've already talked about and would be very likely to translate to some level even tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do have to remember there's a time and a place for practice and work, and then there's a time to shut the brain off and keep it more simple and be athletic and flow things and get emotion going. Yeah, love that. Love that.
So,
see, when you're deep like that, this is a great analogy and something I'd like to share with the viewers, is if you think of more like Justin Rose's rehearsal, right? Justin Rose has a rehearsal where he really feels like he keeps his back to the target momentarily and his hands kind of drop naturally as he gets his lower body around. So it's kind of a feeling of delaying that, because we know if we get to the top and just rip open, we're going to be in trouble, because that's not what we're trying to do. So he feels like he's kind of back here, but as he's opening his lower body. Yeah. And that's the blend that we want more, so that allows us to come from a much better
I think the misunderstanding, Jake, that people get, because if you were to look at maybe the TrackMan numbers for me, or you would look at what actually feels like it's happening in impact, it feels like I'm stuck and under, right, at impact.
Yes.
But we know that's only a moment in time. Because I'm getting steep early, I have to get dumped under late. So a lot of people would think, well, I've got to get more in front if they're feeling stuck and under. So I think it's really important that we understand why that's happening at impact. And it's actually because we've got to get shallower and do the thing you're trying to almost get rid of at impact. But that's going to change then how you work through the ball, right?
Absolutely, and that's a great example of Sergio Garcia. He's very, very shallow back here, and he rotates really well at the bottom as a result. Yeah. And it's all about matching it up, and like you said, a lot of players are trying to shallow it late with their body, and they say, well, why would I want to get shallower or deeper if it's going to make it worse? Well, it allows us to succeed and do better things with our body and be a better athlete.
And that's what early extension, which everyone talks about. That's the common fault in most golfers, isn't it? Early extension, which is coming from steep there. I've got to say, those two shots I hit felt absolutely out the middle of the club face.
Perfect.
That felt absolutely fantastic. So the sliding motion that I've got, huge slide this way. Do you feel that is a byproduct of backswing? Or, I mean, I've done that for 40 years, Jake. I've been quite leggy for 40 years. Listen, I was a student in the junior golfer in the mid 80s, right, where it was you were told to drive your legs, right? So that's always going to be there. I'm always going to have more lateral force than I am rotation and vertical, but that's got to water down. So my question is, how much do you think if I just work on backswing, will I water down my horizontal moves?
It's a great question once again. So let's talk briefly about speed and forces, because you did mention the lack of speed. We know that we have verticals, which is straight up and down. We have horizontal forces, basically like slide, like you have a lot of. And then we have torques, which helps us rotate. Yeah. That's the ones you're really struggling with, is more of the torques, which gives us the rotation, and the verticals. You have much more linear or horizontal type forces, which they do play a part, because we know we need to get into our lead side. Now, you ask, will the backswing actually help water that down? It should, yes. But we are battling your lifetime of sliding. So why do we slide, first of all? Well, like you said, the backswing. If I don't have as much depth, a slide is the matchup to get me to come from the inside. It's the way I'm going to do it. Because if I tried to open up, I'm going to be in a big world of hurt there. So now you start to slide to match that up. Also, if I release early, okay, Wouldn't it be helpful if I slid in front of it to help me compress it? Absolutely. So that also feeds into that. And the problem with you is if you're releasing with all this flip, if I slide in front of it, that flip's going to be late and I could hit a big block. Or if I don't slide as much on one and I really get a little earlier with the flip, now all of a sudden I got a big hook. And that's a big, big two-way miss. So when you start getting in a position of depth, you shouldn't want to slide and stand up because you're going to be so far back here, your brain is going to go, no, 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 I want to start turning more.
Yeah.
Because this isn't what I want.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think
so I
golf
think
is,
being an athlete,
I think it's such an instinctive. I think the golf swing is so instinctive. For someone who's played a lot of golf, no, even a lot of like, mid-handicaps who played a lot of golf, the instinct will take over if you get the movement right in the beginning of the chain. So I think that's what we're talking about there. Now, what about the backswing? Because I've got a swing catalyst. I've been on swing catalyst quite a lot, so I do move up to 90 to almost 100% sometimes into that trail foot at the top of the backswing. With this feeling of the takeaway and then that move, do you feel that it might be a bit more like 30-70 for me then, without getting too technical on that, rather than the 0 to 100? Because obviously the more I've got to shift here, I guess that more I'm going to be wanting to move back this way, right?
100%. So if we end up at the top, one way or another, however we do it, if we end up too much on this trail side, we need to slide. Because obviously we wouldn't want to just sit back there or it'd be a disaster. So yes, getting our pressure in a good spot, feeling more 50-50 on our feet at the top, or even 60-40, favoring the lead leg at the top is a good feel for sure.
Well, I think
so that's
Jake,
a nice simple
I think, Jake, because I tend to get down here with a strong hand, I think this roll brings me across, right? So I think if I just focus on this grip and the pinch with the top of the left arm, like I don't feel like I've moved there, you know?
Much better.
Right? So it's there. Better. So if I just try and do this two-piece now, one other question. I want you to check my shaft lean address. So if we just forget ball position and I'm going to go back, I'm going to forget the grip thing, and I'm just going to go back to where I would kind of naturally be, which would be that.
Okay.
That was me natural. It's an A sign. That's me natural.
Yes.
Okay.
That ball is too far forward. I agree with you, and the grip obviously was stronger, like you mentioned.
So if I get the grip there, and if I go more there, how does that look in terms of shaft lean and ball position?
I like where that's at. Your ball is basically off your left ear, which is a good stop position. You don't have your sternum in a lot of tilt away from the target. You're pretty neutral. You could have a couple degrees, that's not a problem. But we know that now that we're set up correctly, obviously if I turn too level, where does my head go? More off target, right?
Yeah.
So I would have to recover somewhere and get back to where I started. So we have to feel a little bit more on the lead side for you would be a nice simple way to think of it compared to what you're used to. That looks great right
So
there.
once I get to the top then, I don't want to think anything about my wrist. I just want to think about rotating my body.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I would just simply feel that for now. Keep it nice and simple.
See, that
much shallower, much deeper coming down.
But I hit it out the heel there quite a lot there. That was definitely out the heel.
Yes. And all things equal, Dan, keep in mind, the more into out we are, the more we could end up toward the heel, correct? So all things equal, if you get deeper and more into out and you don't rotate, you're going to get maybe a touch of heel strike. So you can short-term adjust by playing it a little more toward the toe until you get better at rotating. And that's something you'll see a lot of tour pros actually do as well. Just adjust their ball position. Adam Scott plays it off the hosel because of his matchup. And some play it off the toe more. Much different pattern. How does that feel?
I mean, that was thin, but I'm not too bothered about the strike.
Which is smart, because when we're working on changes, obviously if we're result oriented, you're going to try and go back to what's comfortable to you as opposed to doing what we want to work on.
So, happy with that?
Yes, love that.
Okay, now from there I'm going to, all I'm really feeling is just try and get you in my mind, but what I'm trying to feel here is is actually rotate the foot, rotate the kind of glove logo to the sky.
Yep.
And point the
That's
club
going
over
to
there.
make your shaft, yeah, that's going to make your shaft in a position where it's you don't have to shift it any shallower. It'll be just fine where it's at. Now, could you still steepen it from there? Sure you could, but you don't have to think about shallowing. That's the key.
I mean, that's just quick.
Much different. Yeah, much different.
Okay, I just get some better rhythm on.
Do this for me once, Dan. Take one to the top slowly. Excellent. Now, feel that extension in your right hand, how it's bent back. Okay. So feel like that stays as you turn your center. That's kind of the feel. So you keep that trail wrist extended, because if I keep it kind of extended, like I'm basically working it down this way, obviously that's different than what? This.
And just trust it will release at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the weight of the club and the momentum of the club is going to send that into neutral to flexion eventually in the follow through.
Okay, so I'm going to focus on, okay, great. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to get the depth. I'm going to feel my hand stay there and rotate, yeah?
Yep. Yes.
I mean, that felt lovely.
Very, very good. Very, very different pattern there. You'll be able to see that compared to the original swing you sent me, how much shallower and deeper that is. And that doesn't require a leap compensation. Let's do the same thing again. Just turn. Good. So a nice simple feel, Dan, is when we think of you lacking torques, which is rotation, is feeling like your left foot is pushing towards the golf ball from the top. And that would make your hip react the opposite. So you're pushing straight toward the golf ball with your left foot, and that makes your hip go where? Backwards, correct? Because the force is going to create an opposite reaction force. Good.
Well, I'm getting down to the ball now.
Yes. And it's a big adjustment. It's a different feel, but the backswing takes care of a lot of it.
Can I overdo this? If I
getting,
Jake, I'm going to hit one now, because I think it's really important as well, just in terms of like the learning thing for people watching, that like, where is my end range? Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
For example, when I teach bunker play, the left wrist cups to a maximum of 65 degrees in most people, okay, which is the angle of the sandwich, right? So when you're going back, you can't overdo it. You can only get it to a max. You can either underdo it or you can do it directly, right? With swing, it's slightly different. I'm not sure if you can do that in swing as much, but just as an example, like, I want to know, can I overdo this going back, do you think? Or do you think I really can't overdo it? Judging by being how on line my shaft was at the top, but how short the swing was. So really it was way across the line in relation, wasn't it? Does that make sense? So,
yes,
you know, in terms of where it wasn't a swing. So,
and I would say it can be overdone if you were a guy that was going to work on it multiple hours every day with big exaggeration, but it would take quite some time. And I always recommend that students stay in touch so that we have enough, back and forth, that I can keep an eye and make sure it doesn't go past where we start yo-yoing back and forth.
So this is me exaggerating.
Okay.
Tell me what this is like.
I love that.
Is that overdone?
Absolutely
Is that where you'd like it to be?
Yeah, I love that, because your shaft is now at the top, plenty of depth, and it's pointed basically right at ball line. That's in a great position.
I mean, I can't tell you how different that feels to how I've been swinging.
Yes.
I mean,
and imagine how different it would feel in flow and motion to be able to actually get there. And that's even more extreme feel than what you just felt from a slow freeze.
I mean, that felt lovely.
Yeah. It's so much easier to work from that position, because you're in a position now where you can keep things much simpler and think of turning more rather than trying to make adjustments for being out of position at the top.
Yeah, it's feeling good.
much different at the top, completely. I haven't seen one where you're even close to where you were in your initial video. So you're doing a great job of the exaggeration. Excellent. Now, here's what I would say going forward from this type of feel. If we're getting in a position where we have this nice depth now, and you had a great question about, can this be overdone? If you started to actually see yourself do this, where you were like way down here and flat, obviously we've taken it too far, okay? Now, if you get up to this spot and you start rotating and noticing that even with rotation, your launch monitor numbers are getting excessively into out, then we could adjust your structure slightly if we need to. But I always tell players to set themselves up in a place where we can like improve, right? So my point being, if I'm in a position where I'm steep in here, I can't work on things that are going to get me better strike and speed because I'm going to have to make a lot of compensations. But if I get in a position back here, maybe at first I'm a little dumped under because I didn't turn enough and I'm a little too into out. Maybe I get a couple heel strikes. If I get enough consistent ones, short term we can adjust by addressing the ball slightly toward the toe, like I said. Now, that would be a great draw pattern matchup. Now, if you say, well, I notice on my launch monitor I'm getting 6 or 8 degrees into out, then obviously we would be encouraged to turn more and more and not win the race with the arms, so to speak, right? Because we know if we're trying to show, like our goal at Impact should be trying to show some of your left pocket to the camera and the viewers and some of your left scapula. So in order to do that, if our arms race down really fast, we're not going to have much time to get there. So that feeling, I always tell people, rotation is a combination of first knowing how to rotate, where we need to be at the top, how it feels to turn, and then allowing time by not racing down with the arms so fast we don't have time to. Because that would be another reason that we could end up too into out.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's definitely feeling freer through the ball. I feel like I've been having to really stall. I've hit some really big left shots where I just feel like my hips are just, they've got ahead and then slow down and my arm just flip. So it's starting to feel a little bit more in sync now, which I like.
Absolutely.
So that was a bad shot. Well, I got that way then.
Yes, I love where you're at the top, though. Really good at the top. Now, when you feel yourself go toward the ball,
I think
our handle's going to get higher,
like I did that
right?
then. I feel like I just slid and the handle got up.
So when you demonstrate that right there, that's this hip going high early. What we want to actually feel is if I'm pushing, like I said, away from that ball with this left foot, where's that hip going? It's going back this way as opposed to going this way. So you're doing this. We want a little bit more of this feel, of this lead side pushing back. That's going to get us turning more like this.
And that's going to level the pelvis.
See the difference?
More. That's going to level the pelvis, right?
Yes, yeah. So the left side's going to be lower at the top, and then it's going to stay low as it, that's the feel more. That'll get us a lot less of that stand-up. Yeah. Much different right there even.
Okay, all right. So I feel like I'm squeezing more with the left foot in the ground there in transition.
Yes. Excellent.
Okay.
I tell a player a good feel for that is like, if I can imagine like a balloon or a ball in my lead hip here, I feel like I'm actually kind of almost squeezing that as I get that hip back and out of the way rather than this, which would actually be not squeezing, it would be dropping it, right? It's almost like I feel like I'm making that angle more acute between that lead side, which is a flexion maneuver as opposed to an early extension, correct?
Yeah.
It looked more like this.
Yeah, exactly.
So getting it out. You see Alex Noren doing a great
he's doing it all the time, isn't he? Sort of,
Yes. Yep.
Right, I'm going to try one without. I'm going to try one without the stall and just hit one from the ball now at sort of 80%.
Okay. Sounds good.
So that went left. I feel like I went maybe halfway.
Yep.
The backswing.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yep. I would agree with you.
Right, exaggerate. So the difficult thing is, it's like when you blend, I'm really trying to feel like I'm going out with a club, and then
Yes.
here I work it more in, yeah?
Yes. You won't have to feel a lot of laid off at the top because you're already getting in a pretty good spot. You need to feel the early out. Yes, that's the big key right there.
That felt good.
Yep. So what I would say is a good feel for your backswing, Dan, to keep things simple, is a feeling of more lead side bend, which is happening up in the lower lat or upper rib cage area. So if I did the opposite, I would end up more over here, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if I do too much of this, where am I? Mm-hmm. This way, right? It almost feels like a putting stroke feel. So that feel will keep you a little more on that centered type position at the top, just feeling a little bit of that left bend, and see that matches with that feel that you're trying to have early with your takeaway.
Yeah, that felt pure.
Yeah. That'll keep your pressure.
All right, that's interesting. So I think actually that movement with the shoulder is going to take care of the takeaway.
Yes, correct.
And then
I think that you won't have to think so much about doing it with your hands and arms if you do that lead side bend feel.
That's feeling good.
Yep. That alone is going to get your pressure in a better place, which is going to get your strikes improved immediately. That with the grip adjustment and the feel that you're going to have naturally because of this lead side bend feel is going to get this more there. Because obviously if I go more flat, I would tend to go more this way. Okay. The grip adjustment and that short-term feel of the lead side bend. Now, if you start looking at your swing and you're like over here, obviously we don't need to feel that.
I don't think I'll do that, Jake.
With your tendency to move your head off, it's a good feel for you short-term.
Yeah. Okay, right. That's fantastic. I love the information. Right, so 3 questions. Number 1, if we were just going to kind of conclude here, number 1, when I'm practicing out here in the net, firstly, do you mind net practice? So when I'm practicing, how would you suggest I actually think about a practice? Let's say I've gone hit balls for half an hour. What should I be thinking about and how should I do the drills? That's the question 1. Question 2, on the golf course, what should be my swing thought? Okay. And then thirdly, how long does it take? Do you think these changes, how long do these changes take to stick, given good effective practice? Will it get to a point where the swing will happen? Now in short game, obviously most of my lessons now are short game. Like for swing coaches like you, I find what I do in short game, I feel I can get the changes to stick instantly. I feel like I can, like almost within an hour, I can completely change someone's short game and they've got it almost forever. You know, I'll need to look at it, but I can make what I'm saying is I can make really quick improvements with short game. It's less speed, people understand it very well, and I can get my hands on them and move them, and I can really make changes that are long lasting. So question 1, how do I practice? Question 2, how do I take it to the course? And question 3, how do you make the kind of changes stick and how long does it take? Long game versus short game.
I love it. All great questions that I think are going to help a lot of viewers. So number 1, I love when players practice into a net. Okay, there's a time and a place to see the ball flight. Mm-hmm. If you have a launch monitor where you can see ball flight and you can actually get feedback such as path and face and, and obviously hitting real golf balls into a net, you could get contact. So there's a lot of benefits to it because we aren't concerned about the result. We're concerned more about what we're feeling rather than what we're trying to, accomplish with our body motion. So I love the net. It works great. When you practice for 30 minutes, what I would do is break it up. Too many players try to do too much at once. Everyone is guilty of this. They say, these are my swing thoughts, and they name off 5 or 6 thoughts. The best to ever do it, Jack Nicklaus said, we can have 1 swing thought max. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the point is, if even in practice, I would break it down to our weaknesses. So let's just say you're looking at video of yourself and you keep seeing yourself go inside and kind of flat with the shoulders and maybe moving this way. I would break that down and say, okay, I'm going to do this first piece here and I'm going to feel an exaggerated feeling of taking it more there and more here rather than what I've been doing. That would be a way to isolate that piece. In general, though, what I would do is say, okay, I've got 4 things that I'm working on for this 30 minutes. I'm going to think of one for 5 swings, and then I'm going to think of the second one for 5 swings, and then I'm going to think of the third one and mix them up because they're going to start to blend together. Now, always save 5 or 10 minutes to just free yourself up, shut your brain down, and flow. Because we need to remember, in the end, the golf swing is a swing. It's not a bunch of positions. So we do want to save some time to let things flow and hit a few shots. And that's always a good thing to do. Now, as far as on the golf course, we are in a situation where it's like, okay, what swing thought should I use? And that's another great question. Here's my answer. I would tell players on the driving range before the round to alternate some of the thoughts you've been working on. Notice I said alternate, don't have all of them. Try one, and then if that doesn't feel great, try another one. Whichever one gives you the best results on the driving range right before your round would be the thought. So let's just say hypothetically for you, you said, well, on the range, the one that felt good to me was just kind of making sure I got deep back here with this a little more laid off. And I would say, okay, so now we go out on the golf course and we're behind our shot. We're looking at the hole. We're visualizing our shot. And I say, okay, I'm going to feel that once. I'm going to go back there and get in that position and feel that. Now I'm going to take one practice swing where I don't think about anything. I just try to get it back where I just felt it. Then shut the brain down, visualize your shot. Think of Jason Day. He closes his eyes, takes a deep breath. He's visualizing what he wants that ball to do. He's not thinking, oh, I got to twist my foot this way or move my hip this way. He's shutting everything down and freeing himself up. And that's how you go about translating it to the golf course, because there's a time and a place for golf swing and work, and there's a time to play golf, and that's where you're at on the course. So you want to keep it simple, and finding that key or that cue that works best for you is a bit of trial and error, because I could give that same swing key to 10 guys that have the exact same problem as you, and it might resonate with none of them, or it might resonate with all 10 of them. So we do have to kind of, through trial and error, find which feels work best for you, and that's how I would translate it to the course. The last question you asked about how long long would this take to stick? How long would it take to translate? And the big variable is the quality of practice. And here's why. I've had students where I've had them for 4 or 5 years. They literally just hit balls. They text me, Jake, I hit 3 buckets of balls today, and I just cringe. I'm like, how many of those did you actually have a good, really focus where you got quality reps? So I'm personally more about quality than quantity of practice. I want to get good motion so it can start translating. Let's just say you practice very effectively and very smart, and you do what we're talking about. I would say you should start seeing these things translate very quickly into your golf swing. Now, here's the key though. I had a very smart student tell me this. He said, Jake, I've learned that if I get 20% of what you taught me into my golf swing on the golf course, I notice a 70% increase in ball striking and play. So you may look at it and go, ugh, I'm not thrilled with this, but you might be very happy with the improvements you're feeling on the golf course. And that's something I see very often, where a student will send me their swing and they'll say, Jake, I'm first hole in one, I'm hitting it better than I ever have, I won my first tournament, whatever it is. And I look at it and I'm like, they've improved, but we've got a lot of work to do. But see, to me, I look at that as a positive, because they're so excited and happy because they've made all this progress, and they still know the ceiling is still much higher, and they still got a lot of room to even get
That's
better.
right, and mentally they're really excited about the changes, and they're bought in, and it's going to motivate them more to keep doing it.
You need to see results in a fairly short amount of time in order to trust the direction you're working.
Well, I quite like Jake, as I'm just sort of doing some rehearsals, I'm like almost like in my waggle. Now Hogan talked about waggle in terms of rehearsing. So in my waggle, I'm almost sort of feeling, I'm almost doing this. You know, there's an exaggerated, you know, and I feel like just do that a few times, and it's going to help me then set down more here, rather
100%.
than that.
Yep. So there's a study that was done. They said that the brain can retain a feel for about 5 or 6 seconds. So if you waggle and do that right before, just like Mike Weir, the great Canadian player, that you're going to get in a position where you'll start feeling. Now that could be a little more exaggerated in your rehearsal. So when I see you rehearse those, I would like to see that club head just a touch more outside the hands feeling. That, yep, a little bit more of that. That'd be a good feel. Good. Now hit it. Excellent.
So I think what I'm getting here, I think I can do that first. I think I can do the first bit. I think to play good golf, I'm going to have to add the second thought at the top. I don't think I can do just one. How do you feel about that? I don't think I feel I can. I don't really want to play like that, but I feel right now, if I'm playing tomorrow morning, I've got to think down with the shoulder.
Yep.
And lay it off in my mind. That I feel that's what I've got to do to try and hit a shot.
Yeah. So just be careful when you do go for this second piece that we don't flatten those shoulders, because we tend to get a little bit flatter with those shoulders. But what I would say that would be a simple little setup, and I think this will be useful to share with the viewers as well. So I'm going to get this and demonstrate it real quick, because I think a lot of players struggle with depth at the top because of, like you said, office jobs and other things that cause us to be not as mobile or as flexible as we once were. So if I put like just a long stick, I often use like a fiberglass garden stake that's about 5 or 6 feet, and I put some pipe insulation over it, and I put this at an angle. I'm going to show you where I put it. And I'm just sticking it in a basket. You could put it in the ground or wherever, but this is a helpful drill for many. Now, if I angle this towards me slightly, you notice the camera angle might be a little off here, but basically this is going to be roughly on my shoulder line. So if I took a backswing and I did what you are comfortable doing, I would likely hit this thing, okay? So what it's basically going to do is give me kind of a visual for my shoulder plane, but also get me in a position of depth. Because in the end, if my shaft and shoulder plane matches that at the top, that's going to be in a position where we can succeed from there. Yes, very much where you're at right there. So this does give immediate feedback, because you can hit balls full speed and you would feel if you made contact with that, right? That was better right there. Yeah. That was a better motion. Like you said, wise not to sit and think a lot about the result short term, but you should start hitting it better pretty quickly if we're moving in the right direction, because we know this pattern of being where you are steep and then standing up and having all this flip through impact is going to be a very frustrating matchup going forward for you on the golf course. So I think that, working little pieces of this out, starting by setting you up at the top to succeed is number one. Then we can continue to work a little more rotation. I don't mind if you have a little extra slide. You look at a guy like Colin Morikawa, who you've worked with on a short game, you know that he's going to have a little bit more linear. He doesn't hit it quite as far as the guys like Minwoo Lee that really rotates. Now, again, great player though, and excellent, one of the best iron players in the world. So there's all different ways to get the job done. We just know that the matchup of being there and here is not going to produce the results we're after.
All right, Jake, listen, that's absolutely superb. I feel like I've got some clarity, which I was lacking. So I'm going to grind on that. I'm going to work on the takeaway. I'm going to work on my grip and ball position. I'm going to work on my takeaway and my tilt of the shoulder. Feel the arms getting depth, staying in my tilt, and I'm just going to turn through it. Now the chances are, I still feel I'm going to get a little bit steeper than I want coming down, probably, and I'm still going to slide a bit. But what we're saying here is just grind on those bits in the takeaway and the top of the backswing, and let's see what happens. And it'd be great if we can hook up in, say, a fortnight, and then we can see where I am with the backswing. I might have got 50% near it. If I get 50% near it, that'd be fantastic. But I feel I can do it. I feel like I've been a coach. I know. I appreciate how much you got exaggerate these things. Okay, so I'm going to really exaggerate it, and it'd be great in a couple of weeks to catch up. And just then, I'm guessing you've got a bit of a roadmap of where you can take it from here. But you're saying for now, let's just get that club in a better position at the top of the backswing.
Yes, because if we try to do too much at once, it's just overwhelming and it's not productive. So let's start with some simple things that are going to get you better results short term.
Yeah.
And that's going to get you to hitting the ball better. When you do it, you're going to likely tomorrow even feel a few shots out there where you're like, I feel like I did a better job of what we're trying to do. And I see the immediate result and the difference in contact and the feel. I'm saying you'll feel a few. You're obviously not going to translate at 100% yet. But being in a position where you're a little bit less across the line, if we even steepen it a little, we're in a much less
You're in the corridor
steep
still.
position than we would be if we started steep.
Yeah,
right?
no, totally. That's
So
exactly. We've got a bit more margin
that's
for
gonna work
error.
out really well.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
All right, brilliant. Listen, Jake, really appreciate your time. Thanks for that. And yeah, it'd be great to look up in a couple of weeks, like I said. And yeah, let's see what we can do with this. Yeah.
Absolutely, and keep me in the loop on what you're feeling and any progress or questions you may have. That's how I like to work remotely like this. You know, keep the feedback coming. Say, hey, I want to hear how am I hitting it, or you know, do you feel like you're making progress? And maybe send some videos.
No, I will do. I appreciate that. And I think what you know, with the benefit of technology now, you know, we're just on a FaceTime here. I'm recording it on another camera as well, I think, as you are. But you know, with a TrackMan and a camera, I mean, you don't even need TrackMan, just a net and a camera. I mean, how much quality work we got done there, and we are, you know, we're the other side of the pond from each other. You know, and it's just amazing. And do you do much remote work, Jake?
Yeah, it's really.
Do you do?
Yeah, it's a really cool, you know, bit of technology we've been able to use to help. I have players all over the world. I mean, I'll regularly work with a student in Nicaragua or Australia or New Zealand. I've got pros all over the world that I'm working with remotely like this because they just don't have the time or the means to get to me always. So we do a lot of this FaceTime, and it can be very productive. We've had people win tournaments that aren't even, you know, at a super high level of player. They just made a lot of gains and they won in their handicap. So it's useful, and I love it for us because we're both busy teaching and working, and it makes it nice. We can jump on here and get some good work.
Yeah, exactly.
And the launch monitor will be helpful as well.
That's useful to get the feedback. And obviously, and we had a good short game session a couple of weeks ago, and has that helped you a little bit in your understanding and practice? Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. You know, obviously I have your book and I love what you've been doing. I think you're one of the best in the world at short game. I love how you simplify things. I love the work we've talked about, and I've noticed a big difference in my players as a result of just having a deeper and better understanding, because like we said, there's just a different approach completely than long game. And there's so many options with short game. That's what I love about it. There's a lot of creativity, and you're really great at, you know, with your social media and all your, you know, all the shares that you give people. I mean, I've heard from so many people how much better they've gotten just by watching all this stuff that you're actually just giving away. So it's really, really good stuff.
Brilliant. All right, Jason, Jake, thank you very much. And I'll let you get off. I'm sure you've got a busy day ahead of you coaching. And obviously, the US Open's on at the moment as well, so I'm sure you want to keen to see who's going to get the job done there.
Absolutely. I'm interested to see what Tiger did today. So it's going to be a fun one to watch this weekend. So I've enjoyed it as always, Dan, and I appreciate what you do. And I look forward to staying in touch and doing this more in the near future.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, cheers, Jake. Thanks so much.
All right.
Cheers, then. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks.